2010 sought to transform the police from a force to a service. 12 years later, have we been able to achieve the service other than the force?
Thank you very much for having me to join this conversation. And I'd like from the outset to say that transformation of any institution can be lifelong. It is not an event. And we have had police reforms in this country for many years, even before the current constitution came into being. And when the 2010 constitution came up, we were basing a lot of the necessary police reforms on reports which had been tabled after the government carried out studies. And we have in mind here particularly the events that took place during elections. We had violence, and we had all sorts of things that made it difficult for Kenyans to feel safe and secure. So the watershed when it comes to police reforms in this country arises from when we had the Philip Ransley report presented to government. And it was very specific that there was need for reforms in the police service, and they enumerated the various aspects of reform that need to be brought about. And I want to say that police reforms may not be seen as a preserve of the police. It is the police, it is the whole society, it is the entire government, and it is the National Police Service Commission as it is anybody else who is interested in safety and security. Having said that, I want to say that we have witnessed a lot of reforms in the police service. And we are continuing to see a lot of reforms happen. We should therefore not judge the police reforms on the basis of some of the things that have happened recently or many years ago. We should see police reforms against the backdrop of consistently seeing the changes that have taken place. For example, I'll tell you that when there was the need to change from a police force to a national police service, an act of parliament came into place, the National Police Service Act. And that act specified exactly what reforms need to take place. Amongst them, having to come up with a new structure. And the new structure brought into place an inspector general instead of a commissioner of police. That's a reform aspect. Having two deputy inspectors general instead of assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, and so on, so that one was taking care of the administration police and the other Kenya Police Service, and they were reporting to the inspector general.
All right, hold it there. We'll pick it up from there, Chairperson. Let me just bring in Catherine, because we'll talk about the psychological aspect in terms of managing our police service. But the obvious question is, have we given a human face to the police service since we gave ourselves the act that Chairperson is talking about?
Okay, thank you for having me in the studio. I appreciate this opportunity. Coming to your question, whether we have given a human face to the police force, allow me to say I believe they have done in one way, maybe not in full. And why am I saying maybe not in full? I know the police, National Police Service, they have introduced counseling for the police force. They're also taking care of, there is an entire department which is taking care of the police officers. Maybe why I'm saying not in full, when you get your bosses, or maybe those people you're working with, being the people who are to take you through a counseling session, it might be very difficult for you to share what is really ailing you. In counseling, let me say, in counseling, it's supposed to be a safe environment, one of trust, a relationship which can work smoothly. However, if those who are still working with you, and maybe some of them are your bosses, it might be very difficult for you to be able to go and share what is ailing you. And for example, maybe the struggle I'm going through is one between me and my boss. So how can I go and share the same with a person maybe who is of a higher rank? Yeah, this could be, but one thing I would want to say, much more needs to happen.
Much more needs to happen.
Yeah.
Chairperson, of course, as you continue with the reform bit that you were talking about, and obviously having the benefit of being an insider as the first chairperson of the National Police Service Commission, I want us to talk about extrajudicial killings, because that is what we are experiencing right now. That's what we are dealing with right now with the disbandment of SSU by the President of the Republic. Philip Alston, even before the changes to National Police Service, had actually cited the police for extrajudicial killings. How come even after we started the process of reform, we're still talking about extrajudicial killings, Chair?
Thank you. You remember I indicated that reforms are a process, and bad habits can persist for a very long time, or bad practices. But before I get there, I want to take this opportunity to appreciate, to thank, and to congratulate His Excellency the President for the initiative he took as one of the measures that are necessary to be undertaken when it comes to the safety and security of Kenyans, the rule of law, and ensuring that proper practices are put in place. He was very quick to ensure the disbandment of the SSU, which many people had come to associate with a lot of dreadful occurrences. You can see many Kenyans breathing a sigh of relief, because you never would have imagined that some of the atrocities that have been committed in this country have been committed by members of the police service, whose duty it is to protect Kenyans and to protect everybody who is living in this country. Now, back to your question. You are saying that all these reforms have taken place, and still we are talking about extrajudicial killings. Training is a very important component when it comes to any profession, any undertaking, any occupation. I think the problem has had to persist from the initial training police officers have been receiving in this country. But I want to tell you it has changed. Much as it has changed, there are a lot of people who still live in the past, those that were trained then. So training is important. I had an opportunity many times to get a glimpse of what goes on in Kiganjo, in APTC, and many other institutions. And I thought there was a little bit too much emphasis on brutality. Not by saying you should be brutal, but if recruits are treated in a manner that is brutal, that anger continues to simmer in them, and as they get outside, it never quite vanishes. It is ingrown. Secondly, there are practices that have been ongoing to the extent that it continues to be vented until even the Mwananchi wonders, what is it that you want to achieve by, unleashing terror on Mwananchi? I'll give you an example. A person is committing a traffic offense. Does a police officer have to grab him?
No, they don't.
Does a police officer have to slap him?
No.
There are better ways of doing it. So this is where practice, this is where tradition, this is where culture must not be allowed to persist. And it must be nipped in the bud by the command. And how do you do this? I think police officers are a human. And I want to tell you that even when you see all these atrocities that have led, for example, to the president saying, can you disband this unit? It's not every police officer. When we have been carrying out disciplinary processes, including vetting of police officers, we only established that there were about 6% of officers that were found culpable. that tells you that 94% of police officers in this country are straight, they are professional, and their engagement with the society is actually acceptable.
All right. Let me take up, Catherine, on a point you've raised there, Chair, in terms of the environment under which we are training our police officers. Tell us from a psychological or from a counseling psychologist's point of view, what the environment does eventually to the people we give out to the public to get them. Because remember, there were about 6 GSU officers who were returned back to training college, obviously because of some threats they had issued to Kenyans online. What does the environment exactly do to what we finally get?
Thank you, John, for that question. Because one thing about the stability of every person, the environment where they have been nurtured matters a lot. Allow me to start by saying, when we are taking the individual police officers for training, these are individuals who have grown from different environments, and they might be coming in with their own childhood traumas. They might be coming in as individuals with risk factors which can make them become violent and aggressive to the community. For example, if somebody feels they are underprivileged, they struggle with their own self-esteem. They have been brought up maybe in a family where poverty was the order of the day, and they have gone through their own enough struggles. Now, if they go to an environment which is not friendly, or it will not help them heal, it will only perpetuate further trauma. And what does that person tend to do? They will suppress so that they will be able to cope. And as there is a place, a time will come where they cannot take more than what they can hold. So basically what will happen, they'll go to the public with their woods, and these woods, they will be reached to the people they are dealing with. All of us, in one way or another, get challenges. But our ability to cope determines how mentally stable we are. Also, the emotional stability will help us relate with each other in a way that one can be able to, to realize this is a police officer, they are humane. Why? Because of the way they have been able to accept themselves, they're emotionally stable, they're able to connect with people. Mentally, they're also stable. Allow me to say that the times we are in, the issues of mental health are real. And at times, we do not realize them till somebody has done something which might look outrageous. But if you are keen to watch, it's something we can realize that this is happening and this person is struggling with an issue in their life.
All right.
Yeah.
Chair, there's been a long-held perception, and of course, as we talk about reform, that even when these police officers commit these atrocities against Kenyans, and there will still be a form of protectionism from within the service, that what you will end up with is a miscarriage of justice. As we talk about police reform, what has gone into this, at least to give some assurance to Kenyans that even when an atrocity has been committed against me by a police officer or against a close family member, that we can still be able to seek justice through the available channels?
Now, it's very complicated when you are dealing with the thousands of police officers from diverse backgrounds, both in terms of training, because there are those who are trained in the General Service Unit, those who are trained in administration, police, school, there are those who are trained at Kiganjo, and all of them have got different attitudes, different. And I want to say that the skills, apart from those which are related to command, there are those we call the soft skills. And if the soft skills that have been imparted in the police officers are not desirable towards nurturing what will be acceptable, then we still will have a problem. Now, the aspect of protection can be a very complicated one if you are dealing with police officers. We are trying to see the extent to which both the Commission and our IPOA, that is Independent Policing Oversight Authority,
yes,
can take their place rightfully. And when offenses are committed by the police against the Mwananchi or by the police against the police, then action is not only taken from within, and that's where we have the Internal Affairs Unit, which I must tell you is doing a very good job. But again, you see, it is subjective. If you are attempting to carry out a reform process, including taking disciplinary action among people of your kind, there is the possibility you'll be a little soft. Hence the internal and the IPOA. And if IPOA were given the room and the money and all the resources to be able to undertake the investigative work, to undertake all the processes that ensure that people within the police service who commit atrocities or other related offenses against discipline are dealt with, I can tell you we'll see this going down. But I want to also say that...
and as you said, that there's a clash already between IPOA and the internal investigations, the internal affairs unit already, in terms of who should investigate some of these cases we are seeing.
Well, the internal affairs unit deals with, you know, it is very clearly defined what the internal affairs unit deals with. And that's why it is internal affairs unit. Mainly focusing on police against the police, or focusing on what could have been avoided, what should be done in a manner that stabilizes the service. But IPOA, the presumption is that officers are committing atrocities or offenses that are serious, that are actionable, offenses that will lead to prosecution. So in this case, I am really saying that strengthen the IPOA function.
Okay.
Number two, give the opportunity to the National Police Service Commission to undertake its role in the process of finalizing on disciplinary mechanisms, because it is common knowledge to many people that there are certain aspects of performance which the National Police Service Commission is expected to carry out, but it is not quite doing it because I'll tell you very frankly, there are those strong arm tactics that are being used just to say you are exceeding your limits.
All right.
And I want to believe that with the kind of attention His Excellency the President has given to the police service and by extension to the National Police Service Commission, we'll end up with a situation where when the command of the police service feels independent, when the National Police Service Commission realizes that we are in a position to undertake certain actions, including regulating the discipline within the police, not that they are the ones who discipline police officers. Discipline in the police service is carried out by the police service itself.
All right.
Right.
All right. Catherine, we have 4 minutes obviously before we wind up, but a quick one. As we focus on what we expect from the police officers, as we demand results, as we demand professionalism from the service, and I think this administration has talked so much about the welfare of police officers, including the Deputy President talking about raising their salaries. Are we expecting so much from the police service when we are doing so little to improve the welfare?
That's a very good question, John. As much as we want to support the police force, one of the greatest support our request, the ones who are doing the reforms, is to give them a support system which will heal the individual person, especially making them stable mentally, emotionally, and even physically, because basically what they are doing, it will take, like now the addition of a salary, it will take care of the physical. But they need to invest much more on the individual person, especially to heal their individual lives so that they can be productive, not only to themselves, but to the people they serve. How can we do this? As they do the reforms, maybe starting from the training area, where Mr. Kavuludi has talked of it's a tough training. Can we start by introducing basic counseling for these police officers? As we introduce this, what will that do?
When you say basic counseling, do you mean external or internal? Because internally, I think they have counseling mechanisms.
External in training them, and especially in what we call self-awareness. The minute, John, I'm confident of who I am, I will not perceive you as a threat or the other person. I will be happy with the person I am. And I will be confident even as I serve the community. You realize at times, if I may use some of the incidences we have seen, he started by asking, okay, if it's a traffic offense, the police officer doesn't need to slap the owner of the car and all that. What you drive that person to behave like so? Most probably because I feel like you are not respecting who I am, because maybe I'm a police officer and you think you are a civilian. You are a civilian and doing much better than me. So unless this person is helped to address their own personal issues, which they will not be able to do with their own, unless an independent counseling facilities where it can, where somebody will have the freedom to air their charge without fear of being intimidated or even disciplinary action taken against you. So that's something maybe as they do the reforms of the police forces, can they consider contracting with, there are many institutions which can offer the services in this nation, and not just services, professional services. Counseling Association has registered, they are registering bodies which can offer the counseling services. So maybe with that, it will give them the freedom to speak out their hearts and minds, even the issues they are maybe struggling with at the family level. Yeah, we have seen them turn to their wives or even colleagues, and if there is help within the police force itself.
That environment.
Exactly.
Chair, I'm under pressure to wind up, but let me just give you 1 minute to comment very quickly on the welfare of police officers for just 1 minute so we wind up. Okay,
Asante. I wish I had a longer time.
We'll obviously organize more time.
Because what we are discussing is a matter that is serious and very important, not just to the police, but also to the Mwananchi. And as we talk about welfare of the police, I'm really thinking of focusing on a number of things which are important. The welfare of an individual police officer must include his preliminary processes. To what extent are they fair? As a commission, when I was state chairman, and I still think it's the case now, we focused a lot on ensuring there is fairness in promotion, in transfer, in discipline, and in terms of progression. If these aspects are taken care of, including good housing, I want to assure you and I want to assure Kenyans, police officers will not be in a state where they will need the services that she is offering. But above all, I want to say that when we think about police officers, their welfare, and including their housing, we must take cognizance of the fact that police officers are a part and parcel of Kenyans, and let them not be lumped in a camp, and we call it a police line. There is nothing wrong with a police officer living with everybody in society to feel the sense of freedom, to feel the sense of acceptance within a community.
Absolutely. And obviously there's a very huge conversation that we need to have for a longer time, because the issues of police welfare obviously remain with us, and clearly, as you point out, Chairman Kavuludi, as well as Catherine, there are issues we really need to point out and probably deal with as we talk about police reform. But thank you very much, both of you, for joining us tonight and to discuss this developing story. Obviously, after President William Ruto disbanded the Special Service Unit. This is how we put a cap on Prime Edition. Have yourself a good night. God bless. And thank you. Asante.